Okay, so today we're going to be changing the rotor and pads on an R32 GTR Skyline. So some things you'll need to do this task. It's nice to have a breaker bar because depending on how old or the last time these rotors were changed, they may be kind of seized up. So a breaker bar, a little hammer, mallet. You will need to you may have to hit the old rotor out. A clamp to push back the calipers, pistons in there, to push them back so you can put the new pads in. Socket set, just basic good old half-inch socket set. I wear gloves because this is a really dirty project. Some zip ties to hold up the caliper while you're working on it, and a torque wrench. That's just to put the wheels back on. The torque spec for the 32 is 110 foot-pound. So yeah, let's and a jack to jack the car up, obviously. So let's get working on this. So first things first, obviously you want to take the wheel off. I have lug locks, wheel locks, whatever you want to call them on. So we'll go ahead and get this wheel off and then get to the caliper and rudder. So once you get the wheel off, what you want to do now is turn the wheel to the side you're working on. So we're working on the driver's side, so we're going to turn it to the right so we have better access to the couple bolts that we have to access in the back. Take the caliper off, take the rotor off, squeeze the the pistons back. So yeah. And one thing I didn't tell you guys, there's a jacking spot right there. There's like an X that you can just put your jack stand on and support the car. Okay, so the couple bolts that we want to remove to get the caliper off is this bolt right here, that bolt right there, and then this tiny bolt right here that holds the brake line in place. So this is what it looks like. This bolt, that bolt, this bolt. These two big bolts right here are 19 millimeter sockets, so go ahead and break that out. You may need to leverage an extension or a breaker bar or a cheater bar to get this done. Okay, so now that we got the two bolts off and the smaller bolt, we're gonna go ahead and open up the master cylinder cap so we can get a good squeeze back in using the clamp. It's just easier that way, and yeah, it'll be significantly easier. There'll be a lot less pressure. And if you don't know where your master cylinder cap is, it's just this little cap right here. So we're just gonna go ahead and open it up. And we're not gonna leave it all the way open. We don't wanna get dust in our brake lines, but just enough so pressure can be released. Okay, so now the caliper is just hanging on right now. So we're gonna go ahead and take our zip ties and tie it up so it just doesn't hang or anything like that. And we'll go ahead and get the rotor off. Okay, so to take the caliper off, there's these two retaining pins that you'll see going through here like this. So they'll be going through here. So all you gotta do is take the little clip that goes into here off, and then just like a little tap with a hammer with a screwdriver on the back side, they just pop right out. You don't even need to screw them off. They do have a flathead tip, but you don't even need that. They don't have any threads on the end, so you just tap them out, and then the caliper should just snug right off. Okay, so these are the old pads. As you can see, they're quite worn down. They still probably had a little bit of life left in them, but definitely need to be replaced. But you do want to save these little spacers. I don't actually know the official name of them, but you do want to save those. And now, I was lucky enough to have my rotor fairly easy to just pop off, but you may need to hit it with a hammer just to break up any rust that may be holding it on. But this literally just comes off. There's no nuts or anything. And then another thing, before you put your rotor on, depending on which kind you get, most of the time they do have like a little film, like a grease around it, so it doesn't rust during shipment. So what you want to do is spray it down with some good old brake cleaner and wipe it clean, because that grease, obviously grease and pads, not a good thing. So make sure you get it nice and clean, and then you'll go ahead and get your new brake pads, and then if it doesn't come with some grease, you want to go get some, and you just basically spread the grease around the back side of the new pads. Okay, so once you get the rotor off, it's now time to push the pistons in your caliper back. Now that's fairly easy. What you'll need is the clamp right here, the clamp, and then you'll use your old brake pads as a surface. So basically what you'll do is you'll put the pad back in, and then you'll squeeze the clamp down, and then it'll push the piston back in, and then you'll be able to put the new pads in. But we'll put the pads in once we get the new rotor on. Okay, so now the pistons are pushed all the way back in. So now we could go ahead and take our rotor, put it on, grease up the new pads, put those in, put the retaining clips back in, put the wheel back on, clean up, good to go. Okay, so this is how the greasing looks on the backside of a brake pad. This might be a little bit too much, but hey, they give you a full pack for 4 pads, and I still got plenty left. So we'll go ahead and put these bad boys back on the caliper. And if you're curious how this works out, is that they kind of sit on top of each other. So there's like 2 little hooks things, these little angle bracket things. They kind of rest on top of each other like that, and the holes should line up just fine. And then that's where you put those little pins in there, and those pins also go through these holes right here. Okay, so we got the new pads in, we got the rotor on, and we just got to put everything back together. So I didn't mention, but after squeezing the pistons back in, you want to go ahead and tighten this down as soon as possible. You don't want to leave this open, and it's going to be a really bad day if you forget that this is open. So a little tip, this can work for any car, is when you get the pads in, you'll notice that it's pretty tedious to get both these pads in, try to get this one hold into place. So what you do is you get all the backing, and you get the new pad in, and then you put these retaining clips in just barely in there just to hold it in place. We'll go ahead and get the other side put in, and then you push those retaining clips all the way in, and then you get the new rotor in. It just pops right on. You lift it up, and it drops right into place. Easy as that. And we'll go ahead, put this backing piece on. Should just be easy as snapping this back into here, or up and around, and then this will just drop right into there. Put all the bolts back on, and then test the brakes. We'll go ahead and do that now. You may have to bleed them, but you may not have to. Yeah, they're still stiff. This would drop all the way down the ground if there was any air in it. So we're good to go. We don't need to bleed the brakes. So we'll just put everything back in. Good to go. Okay, so we got all the bolts back on. I tightened them down. I don't have a torque spec. If someone does watching this video has a torque spec, comment down below what the actual spec is, and you can use your torque wrench for that. But basically I tightened all the bolts down, so basically they're just nice and snug in there. Probably should have put a little bit of anti-seize on them, that wouldn't hurt. But everything's back together. Just gonna go ahead and throw this tire back on. And again, the lug nut torque spec is 110 foot-pounds. So we'll get that on, should be good to go. And you wanna, test the brakes a little bit. I'm gonna do another video on the rear brakes. I gotta get those done sometime this week. But I gotta take the lady to the fair, so I just wanna get this one done. And again, clean up. Brake dust is not good to breathe, and even though your face has been in this already, so wash your hands before you eat. Okay, so we got the wheel back on. We just tightened it down with a wrench, so now we got to torque it down. So for those of you that don't know, I'm just going to throw this in here how to use a torque wrench. So you got these numbers down here. These are basically 1, 2, 3, 4, and it goes all the way up to 9. So right now we got to go to 110. So we get the 0, and you see that little notch that says 110, and it goes right there. So now we're at 110. If we want to get 111, we just crank it over to the 1 like this. So now we're at 111 right now. And then we're just gonna go ahead and lock it on. And then we're gonna torque it all the way over until it clicks. You know it's torqued. And the brake change and caliper change, rotor change and brake pad change is all complete. Okay, so the wheel's all torqued down. We already checked the brakes to make sure we don't need to bleed them. If you do have to bleed them, that portion will be done before you get the wheel on. If you're to get the wheel on and you tried earlier and pushed the brake down and it's pretty loose, well, unfortunately you gotta take the wheel back off, disconnect the little line that you'll see on the top of the caliper right there, and basically, usually you'll have two people do it. You'll open up the cap, not open up the cap, sorry. You'll have the cap closed and then you'll push on the brake. Some brake fluid will come out and it'll get all the air out. And then once you get all the air out, good to go. So now we just got to clean up because a little messy. I will say I'm a little dirty to go to the fair right now, but yeah, should be good to go, right, babe? She's been patiently waiting. I was gonna do the rear ones today, but the front tire took about 1 hour, so I don't want to spend 3 hours here. So the front ones are the most important brakes. Even all brakes are important. Those are the most important. And of course, once you're done with everything, do yourself a favor and put your tools back. This place used to be a pigsty. I would get a project done and just leave shit everywhere. It's just, I don't know. But I'm doing my best. I'm still waiting on my tool chests to come in. So for now, they have their designated spot right here. And just put everything back. Organization is key. Makes everything so much simpler. Even though it's really hard to put things back where you found them. It's not that hard, actually.